Welcome back, everybody. How's it going?
What's going on with you?
Unsolved Mysteries of the Reservation here. What do you got over there? What do you got over there, Tyler?
Oh, I'm just
looks like you
peeping a story that was sent in to Chris, and so I was just kind of proofreading that. He was asking me about that one, so
yeah, go ahead and read it.
Oh, you want me to go ahead and read it? Are we just going to jump right in?
This is a listener story?
Yeah, the listener story. Man, we're not even checking the water for depth. We're just diving in head first.
We're trying to keep you on task, Tyler.
I hope y'all don't break my neck.
Your hand was all over the phone and looking at me, and I was like, what do you got going on over there?
Yeah, he
Tyler?
thought I was watching Bigfoot's Wild Weekend without him over here. So it says... well,
I can't see the screen. It's
for a reason.
That secret screen.
Chris put that ended medicine on it. You don't want anybody seeing what he's looking at.
Actually, this is his second cell phone, actually.
Yeah. Second cell phone. Nah, this is a... well, first of all, I want to say what I was going to say, like a... man, we had a lot of feedback on the LP episode. And I was kind of unprepared for that. And we had a lot of people send in listener stories. And this is one of the listener stories that was sent to us. Should I give the name? Or
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
it just says Jenna Meek. Yeah, and it says that this happened when her son, when he was 1 or 2 years old. He's 22 years old now. But she says, we had lived with my grandma at the time, and we knew that there were little people in the woods across the road. And my son was super sensitive to certain things. And she said, I made it a point to stay close when he was outside because he was always trying to go across the road behind the neighbor's house. And one night we were watching TV, and all of a sudden my son starts saying, Mom, I need to go outside. And I say, for what? And he says, my friends are out there. And she looks over to the grandma and then back at him. And she says, no one is outside. And he says, yes, there are. My friends are out there, and they want me out there too. And she says, I say no. My grandma told me you better not take him outside for any reason. My son then proceeded to cry and practically threw a fit to go outside, and he cried himself to sleep that night. My grandma said that you better stay up and watch him to make sure he doesn't go outside. And then she says we should take some turns watching him. Neither one of us slept that night. But she said that she did not take him to get doctored at the time because she didn't trust anyone around her son. So that's a good story there. You know, I told a similar story that I actually got in trouble for telling at school. This happened probably back in 1975, and this has to do with LPs taking children. But this happened on some land a little bit south of Eufaula, and there was a young mother and her daughter were going to collect pecans. And I had said, Native people are responsible for most of the North America's food. We were talking kind of off air about, where do you think we got all this knowledge from about what plants to eat and what roots to dig for and, things that were safe, that came from somewhere. It wasn't like you would just stumble across a yam in the ground and think, I'm going to eat that. You know what I mean? So, but long story short, pecans are big in Native communities, especially around here. And so this mother was wanting to go collect pecans on some land from this old man. And the old man told her, you just go down this old dirt road, about a mile. And the pecan trees are just on the other side of the cattle guard there. And so she took off down this old bumpy dirt road with her daughter, who was about 2 at the time, in the front seat. And, of course, this is back in 75. Nothing was built up like it is now. I mean, she said they're basically out in the middle of nowhere. and she got to the cattle gate, and jumped out of the car, left her 2-year-old daughter in the front seat, because that's what you did at the time, because there weren't no car seats back then. You just rode shotgun in your parents' car, and then opened the cattle gate, and then got back in the car, drove through the cattle gate. Then she was going to jump back out to shut the cattle gate. And then she went back to shut the cattle gate. And when she went to get back into the car, the little girl was gone. She disappeared. And she said that, at first she just was like, like, where'd she go? She didn't really think much about it, because we weren't so, like, what I'm trying to say, like, overly, like, scared about things like that back in the 70s. And she said that she called out for her little girl. She called out her name. And she said that all she could hear at that time was just kind of like the wind blowing in the trees. And she heard like chattering squirrels. Sound like squirrels chattering. And so she said, well, maybe she, got out of the car. And so she walked around the side of the car, fully expecting to see that little 2-year-old girl, just like maybe out in the pasture or something. Walked around the side of the pasture, little girl's not there, gone. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, maybe this is like a game. Maybe she's just hiding from me. Opened the passenger side door and, looked in the back seat, nothing. Looked in the trunk, nothing. This woman got down on her hands and knees, looked under the car, and that little girl was just disappeared. And, of course, at this point, mom is freaking out because she's like, where could she have gone? I was only gone for like 30 seconds, just long enough to go shut a cattle gate. And she said, she started to panic. And, when you start to panic like that, your brain doesn't think logically or function right, So her first reaction was she's going to run to get help, even though the car was right there, but you're just not thinking right. And she said she turned around to run back to that old man's house, and almost like knocked into her daughter. Her little daughter was standing right there with her arms up like that, reaching out for her. And of course, when she saw her daughter, she, got down and like scooped her up and, are you okay? Like, what happened to you? Like, oh my gosh, like you scared me to death. Don't ever do that again. Like, what happened? Where did you go? And then said the little girl pointed up into the trees up there, and the mom looked up into the trees, and up there within the pecan tree were squirrel holes, but she didn't see any squirrels. And that's what they say, when you hear squirrels but you don't see them, that's the little people, and they're talking. And so she put the little girl back in the car and drove back down to tell the old man what happened. Said the old man just laughed like, yeah. Said, I think them little people were pulling a trick on you, taking your daughter. They said that they know when you got scared that their trick was done, that they put her back, because you got too scared. But that was a story that I was told, happened back in 75. And it was kind of funny because I teach school, and it was around Halloween time. And I told the kids, I'm going to tell you a scary Indian story, a real true Native American, ghost story. And boy, all them kids were like, oh, you can't tell me a story. It's going to scare me, But I told them that story. And then let me tell you, all them kids got scared. I got calls. My principal said, Mr. Randall, you can't be telling those stories like that. I got parents calling me telling me you scared their kid. I was like, all right, no more stories. So
I thought I saw you on Channel 2 News. Today at Glenpool Schools. So.
I was telling them, nah, man, you want those stories now, you're going to have to pay for them. No, I'm just kidding. Nah, I'll tell them to go to the podcast, I guess.
Yeah, you'll have to share those.
Yeah. I want to thank that Gina Meek for her story. I appreciate you sending that in to us. And again, I hope we did you justice.
Yeah, that was a good one. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Donnell Barlow, and I am an enrolled tribal member of the Ottawa Tribe Otter Clan, and I am also Yurok. This story is about my first encounter with a shadow person, and for me, it was the most profound and the one that has the strongest image because of the detail that I saw that night. And so this happened when I was 7 years old. My parents were finally able to afford to build their home, their own dream home, on some land, and I didn't know at the time that my mother was critically ill. I was told she wasn't well, but I didn't know that she had a terminal diagnosis with pancreatic cancer. So we ended up moving into the house, and my parents' bedroom was down a long hallway, and then my bedroom had another bedroom that was it was diagonal from it, and when both of the doors were open, you could see into that room. And so one night, I remember getting startled and just waking up in the middle of the night, just, wide awake. And I just happened to look into that other room. And I saw a black figure, and it was very, very detailed. I could see the head, I could see the shoulders, the body, and what I thought was a man. I thought it was a man that was in the house or something. And this figure, I saw it creep around the bed and maneuver around the other side of the bed in that room, and then stand up and start walking towards me to come out of that room and across the hall. And I was petrified. I screamed to the top of my lungs, and I jumped out of bed, and I slammed that door, and I just screamed for my parents. And so I woke them up, and they eventually let me come into their room, and I remember just being so terrified to come out of that bedroom, but I did, and I just, as fast as my legs could run, I ran down that hallway into their care. But I'll never forget, because that figure was just, I saw just all the detail in that figure, and it was so clear. It wasn't out of the corner of my eye. I saw it dead on. And my mom passed, probably about 6 months after that. And I don't know if there was a connection there, but I definitely was meant to see that figure, because I woke up to see that figure just before it came in. I had another instance with a spirit before. I've actually had a few, but this one was before my father had passed away about 6 years ago. And so he had gone into the hospital, and they had said, he has this much time, and just get ready to prepare, because he was having a lot of heart conditions, and they could no longer operate on him. And I came home, and I was just weeping, and I was just so upset and trying to prepare. But I thought I, still had a little bit of time. And I felt in that moment, a touch, and I knew that it was my mother. And so she touched my hand, and then I felt that sensation all the way up my shoulder. And so I knew in that moment who it was, and I also knew that it was going to happen pretty much right away. And my dad did end up passing away the next morning, which they weren't expecting, but I knew that she came that time to prepare me and to comfort me, and to let me know that he was ready. Thank you for listening to my story.
I wanted to thank Miss Barlow for another great story that she sent in. I think that was a definitely awesome one. I know on this topic of this episode, we're going to be talking about or discussing weeping spirits, and I know many tribes have different stories, different versions, of these weeping spirits. And they also have, real deep meaning for a lot of native tribes. These spirits that, we're talking about tonight, they have different aspects of them and different categories of them. So it can be kind of confusing a little bit, but, we're going to try to do our very best. Again, if there's something we leave out or forget to mention, we apologize right up front, and the first thing that in this story that Miss Barlow, is talking, she had 2 stories. And, some way, somehow, something kind of came and notified her about someone going to pass. And that's kind of the I don't know how you say, the prominent story of these weeping spirits. Not only, will they make you sad, but, they're going to take somebody, and some of these elements, they talk about, they hear, a woman crying, real uncontrollable cry, real heartache cry. And, a lot of tribes, they'll say those are those weeping spirits. They're telling you that someone's going to pass. Or, for example, like in Mrs. Barlow's second story, it was someone that was familiar to her, letting her know that this spirit, is notifying them that, her father's going to pass, and in Creek country, you'll hear, a lot of stories like that. They'll hear something crying, outside their home or in the room with them, and they'll automatically say, okay, someone's going to pass. What do I need to do? Those old timers would tell you when you encountered these weeping spirits or this form of weeping spirit, that, you are to notify your close loved ones, or to check on them, one, to make sure that's not them. And if you get them notification in time, you might break the spell or break the track. So maybe that person that was supposed to pass may not pass at that time. That's kind of what they would say. So, you encountered one of these or you heard one of these, you were to go and check on, your close loved ones, no matter how far away they might be. Might just be a phone call that you need to do. And I know nowadays everybody likes to text. So, that's something that I would, tell my people, my loved ones, I heard this, or, I felt this, or I saw this, because sometimes it doesn't always come with sound. You might hear it, or you'll feel this uncontrollable urge that you just get super sad, or you just feel like you want to cry. Well, they say that that's that weeping spirit letting you know, death or someone close to you is going to pass. And that's real prominent, in Indian country. And I know some say, also, there's other spirits out there that, that they believe that, kind of have that same kind of mentality or same kind of duties. I think they talk about water babies, that have that ability. You hear them cry, or you hear them in the lakes or the waters or the rivers, like you hear faint. A lot of times, especially here in Oklahoma, you'll hear a lot of stories about crybaby bridges, and it kind of has the same kind of meaning. You go across there and you hear that baby cry. That one kind of is a little bit more specific. It is talking not only about someone that's going to pass, but it might talk about maybe somebody that hasn't been born yet. And so, that's more specific. Those old timers that used to, this is way before white doctors and all this, you had different kind of medicine people. I don't care what tribe you belong to. They all had different doctors, I guess you might say. You had one for the ground. You had one that, took care of witching. You had one that took care of this and that. But one of the most prominent ones that you don't hear much about, especially too much here in Oklahoma, you might hear it mainly, maybe some of these other tribes, I don't know. But like, what do they call them? I guess they have a name for them. I think they call them like midwives or something like that. They help with the birth of children. And they had special medicines. They had a big belief that if a child passed away inside the stomach of the mother, that was due to some kind of entity. And some tribes, they even had stories of these weeping spirits coming to collect babies, like that would cause, what do you call it? I just said it. I just forgot the name of it. Stillborn. Where the lady loses the child.
Like a miscarriage.
Miscarriage, yeah. And so they had certain medicines that they would give to these women that were pregnant, and during their term to drink and wash off with, and especially before and after the child was born, they're getting ready to have the baby. Those old ones would know exactly when it was time, and they would give them that medicine, say, drink this, wash off with it. Not only will it help your body be strong and recoup better, but it's going to be good for that baby, because that baby's going to be kind of left open, for a little bit, because, it's newborn. And those negative things, they crave those new spirits. So they would use certain medicines. This is what I was told. And again, you used to hear a lot of stories like that in Creek and Seminole country, about, taking care of these new mothers, that would, have children. And I think it was, I was told, that, this was, a prominent practice, even up to probably the 80s. And now you don't very seldom hear that too much. I mean, I don't know, you might still, in these smaller Creek and Seminole communities, but, they used to, take care of those kind of things. But, there was other entities that Muskogee Creeks would kind of consider weeping spirits. You'd be by a lake, or, they'd always tell you to be careful when you camp by a lake or a body of water, because they say sometimes you might hear singing, a female singing, or, a faint cry, and then you kind of go into a trance. And they say they call you to that water, and you just go in, and you walk in, and you don't walk out. And these spirits would draw you into the water. These are different than the water monsters. These are unholy spirits, and they were there to collect souls. I've heard these stories, again, a couple of years back, I heard stories about that down in Tin Killer, and, down in those areas, and Cherokee country and Choctaw country, and, some of these other places, where they have big bodies of water, and they would say, these things would call people into the water. And, anyway, they say, of course, this usually was at nighttime. And they would always say, that's when it's at its most powerful time, after midnight. And so, they used to say if you ever camp by, water, most Indians would always have offerings to the water and to the spirits, so because of those kind of things. And, again, some looked at them as, how you said, like I said before, like announcing, someone's going to pass, so, there was different types of those weeping spirits. But, if you think about it, I think they were named justly, because, either they're going to make you cry, because of yourself, or because of a loved one that's going to, be no more, so, they had, several stories like that. They would also say, if you were in the woods, and, again, you didn't take care of yourself, out there, sometimes you might see this woman, walking in the woods. And again, for some reason, you follow. And they say when you follow them, you lose all track of time. You might end up 10, 20 miles away from your last destination, or you might be out there for days, and then finally you come to. They say it's one of those weeping spirits. It's playing with you. It took off with you. And, sometimes, you don't come back when you encounter those things. So to me, again, these are very complex spirits, and this is one of those spirits that, you don't really hear too much about anymore, and especially when it comes to these, how you say it, expecting mothers. Long time ago, it wasn't just a Creek thing, but, a lot of tribes, they practiced that. They wanted to guard those new lives. And, I don't know, maybe there are some tribes that still practice that pretty regularly. I don't know. But, those were, very common stories that you would hear, in the 60s and 70s, and somewhat even in the 80s. But now, I haven't heard one in quite some time, other than the ones that you hear across the waters. I always mention the Irish people, but they're like Muskogee people, because we had a relationship with them, and they have these entities that they call banshees. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but anyway, it's also a woman that cries. They'll hear them when someone's sick. If they hear it, they try to run it off. They try to do certain things to, get it to go away, because basically it's calling that sick one, to the other side. They have several different stories, several different versions of these banshees. You got the Filipinos that got stories about these. They're kind of like vampire entities, but they're like a weeping woman. And why I say they're like vampires is because they go after these pregnant ladies, and they have their own ways of I don't know, I guess how you say, preventing them from coming in. And again, I know that's probably a scary situation, whether you're gonna be able to carry that child full term. And sometimes with their stories, soon as that baby's born, it's in danger, for a certain amount of time. So there's certain things that they do. You've got I'm trying to think, you've got a spirit over there in, I want to say Egypt. It's either Egypt or Africa, wherever they got crocodiles. I think they both got crocodiles.
Yeah, they do.
But they have this this being over there, and it's part crocodile, part woman. And they say you see it. Any pregnant lady that sees it, they're gonna lose their child. And again, they say, this thing cries, to make them look at it. And if they look at it, they're going to lose that child. So you got, spirits like that through many different nations, outside of the Americas. You also have, the Russians have one too. And it's kind of like when you see it, like the one I told you, you kind of lose track of time. It kind of takes off with you. And basically eat you. You know, man or woman. You know, you see it, it's gonna put you in a trance, and then they find you outside. You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, they have those stories like during their winter times, and then you travel in their mountains. They talk about those kind of spirits. Or they'll say, you know, if you have abandoned homes, you know, those things, how you say, set up camp in those abandoned places. So you have to be careful, you know, going into those places. You know, the Hispanic people, they have one that's similar. I know Yehola mentioned it before recording, and I might pronounce it wrong, so I apologize.
Lorona.
God, I can't say it either now. Lawyer. Okay. Anyways.
Well, yeah, like Russell be saying.
Lorona?
Lorona.
Lorona. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah. However.
Yeah, if we're saying it wrong, correct us.
Story behind this one, you know, it goes way back. You know, a lot of them think it's kind of like current, you know, but you know, actually that story even has a different name from its original creation. But I guess my understanding is from the 1900s, it's kind of changed to that name. The story is still the same, you know. She married a man, and you know everything was good, you know, and then I guess he got interested in another one, and he ran off, and so she got mad, and you know she had kids, so to get back at him, you know, she drowned her own kids to hurt him, and then she died, and God cursed her to roam this earth. And you know, the Spanish people, you know, it's not just here in Americas, but any of those Spanish-speaking countries, they have this entity, and it goes after children or mothers. And so, you know, they always say that, you know, they tell these stories to children to straighten up, but you know, again, you go to some of these older Spanish-speaking countries, and they, you know, really believe in these spirits. You know, they got different medicines to kind of ward her off. And, you know, now you'll hear these stories in, you know, these bigger cities where you have a lot of Hispanic communities, but it's more updated version than the original version. If you hear the original version, it's pretty scary, you know, because it has to do with an actual entity that caused that lady to do that. And, you know, of course, she got cursed, and, you know, she's here to roam, you know, forever. And, you know, she takes children just to get back at, you know, the creator, you know. So, you know, you've got a lot of these kind of stories of these weeping spirits. And, you know, you also have the Alaskan people, you know, they believe in mermaids, you know, and those are kind of the same kind of instances. You know, you have these females, you'll hear them crying and singing in the water, and they'll take those sailors off, you know, and capsize their boats, or just basically take all the people that's on that boat off, you know. And
in the Northeast, don't they have a thing called a siren?
Yes, and I was getting ready to talk about those too. You know, even in Egyptian countries, you know, they have what he just called was a siren. You know, it was a female, and it has like a loud cry. And this one, you know, it's kind of a little bit different, but still yet, you know, if you hear that cry, they say, you know, pretty much you're either going to get serious bad luck or you're going to die. So hearing that big scream, you know, is very deadly, you know, but which I think is pretty crazy though. You know, you get that word siren, that's what those were created from, was those entities' name. And when they made that device, they called it a siren. But that's where that name came from, supposedly. You know, again, I'm not historian or what, so I'm not going to say whether they're right or wrong. I'm not here to offend no one, but I still think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's we had talked before we started recording, and I'm like, man, I don't think I have anything, when it comes to sirens. Are you out here, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My boy's acting.
No, you're good.
Slug me. Sorry, I'm on my phone. Help.
Tyler's exiting stage left. Bye, Tyler. No, but we had talked about. I know before we started recording, we had talked about. I was like, man, I can't really think of nothing. Well, then you started talking about the different things, and it dawned on me that I was sent a story about something like this. And we've read her stories before, but her name is Moni Leaf. She actually sent me a story on Halloween night. Basically telling me a story that her grandson had seen something outside the window. And we wasn't really sure. He got scared. So she's like, all right, calm down, go back to your video, hang out, just we'll wait till your mom gets home, Well, then he goes to bed, and she's like, I'm going to go outside and kind of hang out. And all of a sudden, she's on the phone with her sister, and she hears this scream from on top of the roof. And she's like, what is that? Trying to really think. Well, then she goes inside, sicks her dogs, and her dogs are, running around her property, and all of a sudden both of them start yelping. And she goes and gets her gun. No, she really does though. But she goes and gets her gun and really starts casing the place. Started really looking around, and but that kind of things like that. I just don't think of that. Another thing you mentioned too was the warnings of family members passing. Here in the last year, here in the last, I guess, couple of years, I've had family members pass. Well, here in the last 6 months, I've had an aunt pass, great aunt pass. And she was real fond of my dad and myself because of our name. And she really loved my grandpa, which is her little brother. And she sent something. I think she sent something, or that entity came and saw my dad. And it was making noises on the roof. So, I don't really think about, I guess it's kind of a cool topic, kind of out of nowhere, you thinking about these things that come and see you and, maybe let you know if family members are passing, or, or even if, something's just there to warn you. But yeah, that's interesting for sure. Especially the banshee stuff and the sirens, you always hear that in history. I know the sirens, the guys would be at sea, and the mermaids too. That's kind of an England type thing. That's out of the UK. Like they have real big stories into that. Especially back in the, dare I say, 1400s when they were, still using ships like that. They say that there's a lot of that stuff goes on in the Bermuda Triangle. They hear those noises, and they always say, "Oh, they attribute it to whales," but not all. But how these people ended up missing. Or a ship will be so far off course it don't make no sense. So that's interesting. The siren and the banshee thing kind of, part of that weeping spirits.
Yeah. Even in South America, like I was telling you before, they have those things that kind of roam their woods or jungles. I don't know what you call them. Down there, they're forestry, and they say, looks like a woman in distress, and when the guys go hunt for her, they end up being either lost or never come back. So there's a lot of entities out there like that, that use that weeping woman type spirit to lure people off.
Yeah.
And, again, hearing the cries alone, is another tool, to kind of draw people off, and I think about that sometimes. I know where I live out in the woods, and well, out in the country, I guess I might say. And just the other night, I was woken up at 3:33 in the morning, and I heard something outside the house crying like a woman. I mean, it was real loud. And I woke up, got up. I started waking everybody up, saying, yeah. And everybody heard it. It went off a second time. And then it did a third time, and it stopped. But again, where I'm at, it could have been anything. It could be mountain lion or what they call big cat, and or what they call it, bobcat or panther. Yeah. And because they say those things scream like women, so. I don't know. It could be something like that. But, man, when I heard that, man, I automatically started texting everybody, calling everybody, and waking everybody up. But, again, that's something, kind of where we're at, it happens, every now and then, not like every day. But, I think it was like this time last year I heard stuff. But, again, and even this time, whether it was or it wasn't, I did hear someone passing away. So again, I don't know. Was it that was coincidence? Is that how you pronounce it, or what? But still, yet, I did hear someone passing away. So again, I don't know. I think that's pretty cool when you know things like that,
Well, and that's one thing, I don't think, we didn't really touch on this, or I haven't, I hadn't said anything, but sometimes that messenger is an owl.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's one thing that I've had so many family members and just talking to them, they tell stories is, like they're saying basically they had an owl come see them, or an owl screech, or, it's an off kind of scream, basically, we used to have, my mom is like notoriously known for having birds show up at her, or hummingbirds, or, owls, or, she's even had crows or, blackbirds, do things to her. And just about every time it's been something, somebody passed away, or somebody's not right, or, ill, sick. But that's one thing that, people always are afraid of owls. I am very afraid of owls. I have, I know people with owl tattoos. I can't talk to those people very much. Freak me out.
Yeah.
But that's one thing. Sometimes my dad had to. He was explaining this to me, and my grandpa also too. As they say, not every time an owl is a bad thing. It's a message, and that's kind of. I know I laugh at res dogs when they blur the eyes out of the owl on res dogs. And I feel that way, but sometimes it's just a message.
I just say they taste like chicken. No, I'm just kidding. No,
damn, be crazy you eating owls.
No. But, getting back to the topic at hand, there's a lot of nationalities, that have that, but also look at it as a negative message. I know like the Australians, even the Hawaiians, when they hear that, they say that's bad luck, or something's not right, and, of course they take care of things. Even those Maori people, they have things like that too, and again, with them, it's a negative entity. And so, there's a lot of people out there that have different stories of these weeping spirits. When they hear these things cry, they do what they need to do to take care of those kind of things, So, I'm just fascinated with how many different cultures have this entity, or stuff.
Now, could it be babies crying too? Like out in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about,
just weeping.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they'll hear that, and I know like some tribes, when they say they hear that, that means somebody's going to, how do you say it, miscarry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but here in Oklahoma, we got a lot of those crybaby bridges.
Yeah. A lot of them.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, because you always hear so many stories like that.
I had, this is something too when you just said that, especially the crybaby bridges. I have heard, that Sasquatch does that. I've heard that they do that cry. I don't know why, but that crybaby bridge, there's one I want to say headed in Fort Gibson, right off the, right over there by the fort, over there by the river next to the fort. I've been out there many a times and heard something out there kind of just cry around, and it's real faint. It's not real like loud. It's just enough to where you're kind of like, what is that? But there's also, speaking of Fort Gibson, there's also I've been out there and you could hear screams of war, of past, reminding people of the sadness that happened in that area. I used to, like I said, I used to ghost hunt. I used to be all out, kind of all in that area. And, we'd hear women crying often. I mean, all you could see, it's flat land, it's hilly, but you can see all the way down, kind of up on a hill. And you hear women crying, losing their husband, or in the war, back, not in the war, but I guess in the war, but kind of, in that time period. But that's it's just so interesting, to hear that,
I've never heard a woman crying. Well, I've heard like scream, a woman scream like really loud. That was in Pawnee, near the roundhouse, way back towards the Catholic Bridge, I think it's what they call it. We heard like this woman scream twice, but one was farther away and then one was like getting closer. And then like I asked about the baby because in Santa Fe, there's like a group of us in this house, and out in the nowhere, out in the middle of nowhere, there was a baby crying. And I told the story before, but I'll tell it again here. I don't know if it kind of seems right, but that's the only time like I've really heard like something crying, which was a baby, and I think there's about 5 or 6 of us there. That window was open, but the mesh part was down. And then, I don't know, we're all just laughing, having a good time, and just talking or whatever. And all of a sudden, like, you could barely hear it, but it's like a baby crying. And there's like it looked like, I guess, a river used to go through there, but it was all dried up. And then on the other side of that was houses. So in the middle of that, there's nothing there. And this baby's crying. And we all just kind of look at each other, oh my God, a baby's out there. And so trying to debate on, should we go out there, or is it something other that's trying to, get us out there and do something? But we didn't know. And then you talk about messenger. I'm trying to think back if anything happened after hearing that, like a passing away or maybe a miscarriage of some sort. I have to think back on it because this is all like new information for me. But I don't know. And then it stops, and then it gets closer. And we notice that it gets closer, and we're kind of like, well, a baby can't probably crawl that fast because it just sounds like, it's not even 1 year old yet, and it doesn't know where it's going, but it's going like directly towards that window, where that window is. And so somebody's like, man, we should go out there. We should go look. I'm like, man, I don't know, man. I don't know. We don't want to, I don't know. Should we call the cops and then have them go out there? But we just kind of sit there, and it stops. Like 5 minutes go by, and we kind of forget about it. And right when we're about to forget about it, it's like right outside that window, like right underneath it. And it's so loud, and it's crying. And then like somebody runs over the window and they shut it, and they close the blinds, and we can't hear it after the window shuts. It just stops. And we're all just looking at each other like it's behind the family housing. And we're just kind of like sitting there, and like we can't believe it. It's just so weird to hear that. And then right as she closed the window, it stopped. And we're all like, should we go back there? Because I used to
Man.
ghost hunt when I was in high school or whatever, and you kind of get that urge, like, man, like we should go check it out, but that's not where I'm from. I don't know too much about that land. I don't know what used to be there. I don't know what that is. It could be a panther or a mountain lion of some sort or something, and I don't know, it's bad either way, if it's a animal or if it's a spirit, who knows, but I have to think about that, if there was something, if it was some kind of message that was sent. I have to think back if I had anybody pass away back then, because that was around 2011 or 12, I think. So I have to think back.
I'm just kind of thinking here. Like I said, that's one thing I love about our podcast. You say something, I'm like, oh, okay, I got, I think of something. But out in Fort Gibson, as you're headed to Muskogee before you cross the river, there's a power plant, OG&E, big old power plant out there. I'm not going to give the specific area, but there's baby graves out there, and they're marked. And there's fences out there that you can go in, you can drive in, and how we even found out about this is someone was telling us that they were driving by and they were kind of out there messing around, being young, and they heard some crying coming from kind of it's real dark, like you'll miss it if you go right by it, but basically the fence is open with it's not mowed, the grass is just high. But if you take a car out there, you can kind of get in there, and it's just a long stretch of road that goes to these about 15 graves of these babies that died during, I guess, maybe 1800s tuberculosis, I believe. And they were driving, and they rolled the windows down, and they heard a baby cry, and they're like, "What is that?" Well, they go and check it out. Cause you can just drive right in there. They drive down in there, and they park their car a certain way so they can get right out. And next, they kind of heard, it was almost like a whimper. Like when a kid, when a child's maybe uncomfortable and they're just kind of whimpering. And they looked around, they didn't see nothing, didn't hear nothing. They went out kind of in the graves. I was like, y'all crazy for this. Going out in the graves and really looking, they didn't see nothing. It's just all these little headstones. And they go to start that car back up, and that car won't start. It's like, it's not even clicking over. They're freaking out, and they heard. I think they heard one more whimper, and they got out of there. They finally got it to start and got out of there. Well, my buddy had a Jeep, and this land is kind of marshy in certain aspects, and we went out there in his Jeep. He had a 4-wheel drive Jeep, and we're out there, and we don't hear nothing, but you kind of sit there and listen and try to figure out if you hear something. And we parked that same way they did. And I'm sitting there in the car. I'm like, I ain't dealing with this. I ain't doing this. They were all outside. I'm like, I know I'm getting my spidey senses going. And they, they all get back in the car. Well, as they shut the door, it looked as like a little handprint or a hand kind of pressed against he kind of had like a weird, like not a plastic, but it wasn't glass. And it kind of looked like it pressed it in. Well, I shined a light up there, and there was a little baby hand on his upholstery, I guess it is, because he had one of those, like with those cars that have like the, like the pull down to where you can, I can't think of it, not a sunroof, convertible. Yeah, it was convertible Jeep, and it had like a little, plastic outline to it where the windows are supposed to be. And I shined that light, and there was a little baby hand on there.
Wow, that's crazy.
See, that's what I'm saying. When we start talking, I start remembering stuff.
Mm-hmm. I was going to tell this story. I had a friend a long time ago, and he was telling me that he was living up in Seattle, Washington, and at this time, he said he had this real cheap apartment, and he said I remember him calling and telling me he seen this it was raining real hard that day. He had just got in from work, and he was sitting on his couch, and he had changed his clothes and was just sitting there relaxing and watching TV, and he said he seen this woman from the rain come in through his door, and it looked like she was wet, and it looked like she was carrying something, and she just looked real sad. And anyway, she said he said she kind of moved to one of his chairs and sat down, and that baby that she was holding wasn't moving. It wasn't making any noise, and she just looked real sad. He said the thing about this woman, though, she was transparent. And you could see through her. You could see that chair and everything. So he knew that it wasn't a real person. One, she floated through the door. Two, you could see right through her.
Man.
And when she sat down, she just sat there for a while. And he didn't know what to do, And then he kind of mustered up some courage and jumped up and, told that lady to leave. This isn't her place. He wanted her to go. And she got up and she went back out through that door. She didn't open the door. She went through the door. And he called and told me that because he was kind of shook up. And he said, what do you think about that? And I said, I don't know. I said, Seattle, Washington is, known to have, a lot of spirits, all over the place. I said, maybe you're just in the wrong place, and maybe you need to go home and see your folks, and, maybe they can take care of that place for you. And it wasn't too long after that, he died. He was hit by a bus. And I was telling my mom about that. I said, I just talked to him over the phone. I said, he had a strange story. I told her what happened, and she told me, she said, well, sometimes we have spirits like that come and tell you, it's going to be your time. And she said maybe that was what that thing was, and maybe, if he would have went and talked to his folks, maybe or maybe not, things could have been different. So
Wow.
There's stories like that, and like I said, my mom, again, she was from Wetumpka, Oklahoma, and those creeks down there that, they have those kind of stories, and, and that's when she told me about those kind of spirits. And so, I think about that, and I don't know, maybe, I feel kind of, I blame myself because, maybe I should have said something to somebody or something, because to me that was a profound story, not only for him, but when he was telling me about it, I knew it troubled him. And at that time I didn't know. So,
man. Wow. Dang. Yeah, I know.
That's one of them right there. No. It's over. I got to go. No. It's time for me to go. No.
This, and we're like I said, we're talking about this. Like I said, people send me stories all the time, and I talk back and forth with different people, and we'll try it again. But so, Mr. Jonathan Blackbear, we've been talking back and forth. So Mr. Jonathan Blackbear sent me a story, and this is kind of interesting. Is basically they had spook trails out on his family's property, and these trail cameras that they had, it was on a VH video, like a VH old cassette, and they would always kind of look at them, and then he'd kind of replay it, and he said, "Hey, do you see that? Off in the far corner was a mist. You could see it on the camera. It was in a misty form, and when they see it, they see a little girl in an old school bonnet, and basically she'd come up from the ground wearing that bonnet, And then when they showed her grandmother, it was his great grandmother, I believe, or no, it was just a regular grandmother. Basically, it was a woman, because I guess she had a stillborn child, and that's where they buried that child, and that's where she goes to see it. I think is kind of what he mentioned. But me and him talk back and forth. There's just another couple other stories he has, but that's just one that, as I'm sitting here thinking, we talk about it, midwife. His great grandmother was a midwife for that community out in Kenwood, and so that's crazy. And kind of to kind of go back to your story though, Chris. Those moments, but also to those stories. You just never know when it comes to someone telling you a story like, hey, I saw this, and this, and thinking back that it could be a message, so that's I'm gonna have to be thinking about that story that you told, because that's one it's not just a level, it's like a hear level. It's like deeper than just that. He saw a woman with a baby in his apartment. That's interesting though.
Yep.
How young were you when that happened?
I was probably about 22.
Oh yeah,
21, somewhere around there. So like I said, I was still learning. I'm still learning today. I don't know. I still don't know a lot of stuff. But that hit me pretty hard when my mom told me. I should have done this. I should have done that. But I didn't know. And so maybe that might help somebody out in the future. They hear a story like that. Maybe they can get the message across to that individual and might help them out. I don't know.
Yeah. Now I know. I didn't know that too. It's just there's a lot of stuff like I know now that I feel like I should have known growing up in my 20s and stuff, but can't change that. It's just like, at least I know now.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least we know now. And like you said, it's information for somebody to help someone else down the line. I mean, that's what it is. It's just relaying whatever it is we know now to just help some listeners out. Because I don't know, that's great. That's a crazy story, having that message like that, and that's why I said, man, this podcast makes me aware of a lot of things. Just daily, I look at things differently. I think about things differently. Things I used to be afraid of, I really am not. I guess I just know better now, not to be afraid of them. And these things are real. They're real, and they're around. They roam, and all you can do is just be good. Be as good as a person as you can be, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, you always hear, stories of loved ones coming to get people too, and I always think about that too, like you'll hear someone saying, my uncle is sick in the hospital, but he saw his folks come visit him, and them been gone
a long
time ago. And so, Indian folks know when they hear that person's probably gonna pass on here real shortly, and different signs like that, so, to me, all that stuff is very interesting. And, again, I think this younger generation, if they haven't heard it, hopefully they'll hear it now and might be able to help somebody out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know if I sent you these videos, but on TikTok it's that Lila Rona. I think that's how you say it. Lila Rona, I guess. I was saying it Lala Rona. If I'm saying it wrong both times, let me know. I don't mean to offend anybody, but there's like videos on TikTok where there's one that caught my eye. I think I sent it to you both, but it's this guy. I think it was a guy. He was walking home from work, I think, middle of the night, and then out in the distance, so there's this woman in a white dress, like crying, and he had his phone. He took his phone out, I guess, and started recording, and it was near these houses or whatever, and He's speaking his language, and you can't really understand. You can't understand. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but we all know the figure, the weeping. We know what it is, and he's like has his phone on it, and he's kind of like he's shaking, he's freaking out. I might have sent it to you guys. I'm not sure. If I haven't, I'll send it to you guys. But he starts like walking faster and faster, and his phone's like all shaky, and he takes like the camera goes off of that woman for a second, and she's gone, and then he's walking like into this other street light, and she's there. Yeah, like she's like right there in the street light, and then he just starts running, and every time he hits a street light, man, his phone's like shaking, and he's running, and he's crying, and he's huffing and puffing, and every street light he's at, man, it's like right there. Everyone. He goes to his house finally, he shuts the door, he gets in, he looks outside, and she's right outside in his yard crying. And then he starts praying, I think, and then he shuts the camera off.
Dang.
Yeah.
Dang, I don't even know what happened to him, man. God.
I heard those stories of, like those different Asian countries, they got stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Similar, a lot of times their story ends up, by a well or by a river or, by the ocean. Some of those Asian countries they'll see this woman weeping by the ocean. And with those guys, they always have like a time limit. After you see it, it's like 7 days. You're going to be gone. But when I think about that, when I heard those kind of stories, what is that one that they have? It's a famous scary movie.
The Ring.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, The Ring. Or, it's The Ring.
Yeah, and so I think about that when, I heard about that movie and, think about those kind of stories. And, again, they got, spirits like that. Like in Japan, they have that suicide forest. And, again, they got things that kind of roam around in those woods. And then, it supposedly gets you so depressed you end up committing suicide if you're out there. A lot of people go out there to hunt, ghost hunt, try to talk to those spirits. But
who was it that went out there? Was it Jake Paul or Logan Paul that went out?
One of them. Mm-hmm.
One of the Paul brothers went out there, and they actually, they went out there and just joking around, messing around, and they came up on somebody who had killed themselves.
They had it on their video.
And they
posted it.
And they posted it on
and they
YouTube.
got in a lot of trouble for that.
Because they were out in that forest, that suicide forest. But yeah, I think they say that people kind of almost lose their mind a little bit out there because they hear things whispered in their ear.
But I remember the numbers on that forest. There's like thousands of people do that a week over there in that forest. So and they say if you go there, you'll see all these tents, where people kind of had their last meal and stuff, and then they kill themselves, whether they hang themselves or cut themselves or shoot themselves. I said, man, that's crazy.
And just imagine the amount of energy that's there. I mean, just the amount of bad, negative, depressing energy. So many of those people have just gone, and just did that to themselves. It's like, I guarantee you there's something out there. As much energy as that's been given,
Mm-hmm. Did we get seen that movie they made?
Oh, with what's her name?
Is it called The Forest?
Yeah, it's The Forest.
Yeah. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it. Is it on Netflix or something?
I don't know when it came out. I forgot. But who's that? Is it a famous woman?
Yeah, I can't remember her name, but she's in a lot of. She was in Game of Thrones. She played the redheaded, not the older redhead. I can't remember her name though, but she was blonde-headed in that. And
she was blonde-headed.
Basically, her goal was to stop her sister from.
Yeah.
From.
It's an American-made, I guess, story for that suicide forest, and it's called The Forest. It came out a while ago.
It was on Netflix for a long time, but I want to say it might be Hulu now. I can't remember. I have not seen it since it came out, but it's pretty spooky. I'll say that.
I'll check it out. I think that'd be pretty cool to watch.
And then the actual La Llorona movie. Have you seen that too?
Yeah, I seen that. I was kind of disappointed in that one because I didn't think they gave it too much justice. But I mean, it's still a good movie. I still watched it and still ate 2 buckets of popcorn. No.
Another one too is Lights Out.
Oh yeah, Lights Out.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, that's another one that kind of deals with that kind of revenge spirit type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was the story on that one? How come that happened? Do you remember?
Basically, I think that they opened up a portal or something.
Oh really?
Yeah, I haven't seen it since it came out. That's another one. Like I said, went to the movies and seen it.
Yeah, we seen it in theaters, and dang, I was like jumping like every time.
Because just imagine you turn it like it's like if we turn this light off and somebody's standing behind Charmin over here.
Ooh.
If I remember correct, maybe I got sometimes I get movies kind of mixed up in my old head, but in it where the mom had a friend that they went to like an asylum because she wasn't right, and I guess that girl, her friend, burnt herself up,
Oh, that was it.
and it come back,
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's it.
Yep.
and something like it was the mama's friend, but that friend didn't want the daughter or the son to be around her, so it kind of got rough, and
Yes.
and then
Yep.
finally the mom and that friend had it out. I think is that
Yeah,
That's
I think
it.
I think
That
is
is
it.
it, yeah.
I was thinking it was a portal, but no, that's another one. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
so. I don't know.
I have to watch it again, but that's it. Yeah,
Is that on Netflix?
I don't think
I have
so.
no idea. I haven't seen, like I said, I haven't seen it anywhere. I'd watch it again if I seen it. That's a great movie. It's freaky.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go home and see if I can find those. What was that other one called? Forest.
The,
The
Forest.
Forest, yeah.
I'll check
Well, they
it
did they did a documentary on it too. It's on Hulu, I believe, about that forest. And the officials. Here comes my conspiracy. I put my conspiracy hat on. They say that the officials say that the number is not as big as it is, but they're finding people out there all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's
Regardless of the numbers, when you still finding people pretty frequently,
Yeah.
something's got to be out there.
exactly yeah.
Something's got to be causing people to go out there and do that. I know suicide is looked at differently from different nations, but still yet, I still think that's kind of, I don't know, that's pretty wild out
Yeah.
there.
But yeah, that's this topic. I'm glad we kind of kept it light. Sometimes this topic talking about sad and weeping. It can be kind of rough. But I think with these spirits and these entities, and even it could be a creature. Like a flesh and blood creature or whatever. Whatever it is, it's that's bringing people out, and it could be mermaid or like a banshee. Whatever it is. To me, it's interesting to dive into that, because there's a lot of stories out there, and I know if you're listening to this, I know you've heard something along the lines. If you had a family member pass, or or you heard something on top of your roof, or you heard something screaming out in the woods that didn't sound right. It's just interesting to hear. Especially we start talking, we just start. Oh man, I remember this baby graves, or I remember this over here at Pawnee behind the family housing. It's like. It's crazy. It's just crazy to talk about that.
You talk about mermaids. Have you seen that guy on TikTok that he works, I guess, on an oil rig or something? He works on a ship. Might be a fisherman. But he got banned, actually, from TikTok because he was posting. He said they were mermaids singing out in the ocean when he was on the ship.
Man.
And they were like singing, and they would follow the ship, and then they would be on the side of the ship, and he would try to catch them like on his phone, but they would be gone every time he would try to catch them on his phone. But he was like, and every day he was posting these at night, and then they would be singing, and they would be laughing, and they would be crying and stuff out in the ocean. And then he was saying like, these are mermaids. He's like, and he's like, I don't know what they're doing. He's like, I guess they might be luring us, or they're trying to get us to go with them or something. And all of a sudden, his account got banned.
Man.
So he's like, no, he's no longer on TikTok. And that's like, you could probably find videos on TikTok, but I think they take them down as soon as you find them, or they might be on YouTube. But I don't know what you would type in, like guy records mermaids or something. But yeah, you can hear him like if you put headphones on, you could hear the singing kind of like way out, but it's clearly like humming and harmonizing, and it's a woman. It's crazy.
Dang, that's crazy.
But if I find them, I'll send them to you guys.
But that's one thing too that I had mentioned briefly. The Bermuda Triangle, that's known for that stuff. The singing, the screaming out in the middle of the ocean. Or people getting lost. And that's one thing that I always kind of wonder. Or like even the Mariana Trench, they talk about there's possibly mermaids out there, because I had seen a video here recently. I think you had sent it to me actually, where the guy was he was like in the deepest part of that. I think it was the Mariana Trench, or it was somewhere where he was deep down in the ocean. And he's sitting there videoing himself, and he's talking, and all of a sudden you see a webbed hand hit right behind him, and you can see the arm. I think you might have sent it to me. Mm-hmm. But, that's just interesting to me. What we don't know what's out here. We really, truly don't. And, you may believe it, you may not believe it, but at the end of the day, it's something out there that we can't explain.
Yeah, there's another one. It was debunked, but it was really cool. You guys might have seen it, but I think it was these two guys. They got in this like mini submarine. They went deep down into the ocean, and there was just these two guys in there, and they had a camera on them, and it was real quiet, and it's dark. The only lights is their lights like outside of their submarine, and then they're talking about mermaids, and then they're getting in this deep discussion about it, and all of a sudden, like, you could see this transparent thing swimming towards their submarine, and it puts both hands on the glass, and it looks at them, and it shoots off. It looks so real. Like, everybody was like freaking out, because they're like, here's our first look at like mermaids, and they're real. And the way they made it look was real, because it wasn't so humanoid, but it was still like it had the fishtail, and it was like bony, and I mean, it looked crazy. It looked crazy enough to be real. And it hit the glass, it looked at him, and it shot off. And then like everybody was like sharing it from YouTube and going crazy on Facebook. And then like 2 weeks later, like, oh, it's for a show on Discovery.
Dang.
Everybody was mad, dude. Everybody's so mad. They're like, why would you do that? But it's TV shows. They got to draw you in to watch it or whatever. So, but that released on Discovery or whatever, and people still watched it because they said like, will we have real proof? You got to tune in. So,
oh my god,
yeah. But I mean, that was I mean, I thought it was real. It was very good production. So I was like, I'm always into cryptids. I'm always into cryptozoology. I'm always into these things that we don't know about. So just seeing that was like seeing a giant squid for the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, this is, because you always heard about it. There are squids out there that are huge, and they fight whales, and the only proof they had was like whales would wash up and you'd see the scars on them from all the past battles that they had with giant squids. And then when they actually got footage of the giant squid on a hook line, I think, or a bait line or something, and it was eating, it was like, this thing's like 40, 50 feet long. So it was like, oh my god.
Dang, I saw a video one time of, they had like it was night vision camera, and they just seen this object. It was like it almost looked like a torpedo, but it was real big, and all of a sudden it just opens up, and it's one of those squids.
Dang.
I guess it was coming to that whatever that thing that he was in, but it might have been a submarine. But yeah, it looked, and then all of a sudden you see it just kind of spread out. I don't know. I know it's off topic, but it's kind of crazy to think that those things are out there. I guess really it's not, because I believe in all this stuff. People say, oh, you don't have no proof, or you don't know that there's a woman in white, or someone out there yelling in the woods, or like you said, weeping spirits. I 100% believe in it, because at some point, science and folklore are gonna come together at some point. And there's things out here we can't explain, but I believe them. It's as crazy as it sounds.
One thing I was gonna tell a couple of stories. Again, to me, it kind of falls in the same genre as these weeping spirits. You always hear these stories of somebody picking up a hitchhiker. She's a young bride. I think there's one in Colorado. Famous road that you see this woman in white. She's walking on the side of the road. You pick her up, and she tells you the sad story, and you go give her a ride, and she gives you address to her mom's house, and then come find out, you get there, and guy gets out and goes up to the door to let them know that got their daughter here. And of course they tell them, hey, my daughter's been gone for 10 years. I don't know, trying to be funny guy or what. Get out of here. You'll hear stories like that. And or the ones I think is super cool is that somebody again picks up a hitchhiker and that asks for a ride home, and of course the individual is taking them to their home, and they pull up, they get out to open the door, and she's gone. And this individual's giving her his coat, to be warm, and he goes up to the door again, and they say, well, my daughter's been gone. You don't believe me? Go to the cemetery. Her grave's over there. And he goes over there, and there's his coat on that tombstone. So, I think that, stories like that, are pretty mind-blowing, and whether they're real or not, I don't know. I know I've heard stories similar to that, and I just think those are just amazing stories to hear those. Again, it's a maiden, in need, and someone's trying to help them out, and then come find out they're not even alive.
Dang, they gone.
Yep. Man. So there's a lot of stories like that. So
I think there's even one out in Eufaula. I think I've heard a few of those. I'll have to start asking around, but man, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Just to pick someone up and you're like, oh, you see your coat on the gravestone? Nah.
Yeah, I'd leave that coat there. Well,
yeah, I would too, no doubt. I don't want no dead juices on. No.
God.
Dang, I know firsthand on that. No.
God.
I'm referencing a story I told at Omogi about me sleeping in a dead man's bed, in the same bed, probably the same sheets. Disrespect.
Didn't even tell you.
Dang it. But yeah, you hear a lot of stories like that. I just think those are phenomenal stories that you'll hear all around, even from non-natives. You'll hear stories like that, and or you'll hear, you'll see. I know they had one, I forget, in Nebraska about the Pawnees. There's a female spirit in that. What was that canyon called over there?
Oh, we just talked about it. I forgot, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Anyway, make a long story short, they see a female Pawnee, and she's weeping, real heavy. And, a lot of people seen her. There's a lot of stories about that. Again, that's a real area. That was a real battlefield. Those things really happen there. So again, I can't help but believe, stories like that.
Yeah, most definitely. Better start believing, Yehola. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Don't stop believing. Can't stop, won't stop. Bad boy. No, I'm just playing. Anyways.
Yeah. So I'll probably cut it right here. If you guys want to plug up where to follow, I mean, I'll do Tyler first. Follow him at Skoden Cinema and Pump Action Podcast on Instagram. Skoden Cinema is on Facebook as well, and Pump Action Podcast is linked with his Skoden Cinema podcast, so it's all in the same umbrella, I guess. So check them out, Skoden Cinema on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can find me on Facebook, Yehola Tiger. On TikTok, One Man Band 918. As I said on the last episode, I started a podcast myself, Warcry Podcast. Episode 2 it will be out on Sunday. Actually, I believe, yeah, it'll be Sunday, following Sunday. That one's going to be Bigfoot in medicine. Will be out too, but the next episode, we'll be talking about some true crime on this next coming episode. But go follow that on Spotify, Apple, and then also YouTube as well. And then also too, I want to plug my Uncle John. He's going to be over at Eufaula Canadian Tribal Town December 10th. They're having their native art show on that day. Go check them out. Go check out all the artists at the event center over there in downtown.
Again, you can find me at Christopher Honka Hill on Instagram and TikTok. I think I'm gonna start me a podcast, but I'm gonna call mine Bigfoot Killer. No, where I discuss all the pizza joints in Indian country. No, I'm just kidding. Just tease.
Check me out at Rustamus49 on Instagram, at Okie Podcasts. Check out Unsolved Mysteries of the Reservation on Instagram as well. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Hit the bell notification to get our notifications when we drop an episode every other Friday. Our videos are on Spotify as well, along with our episodes. So check us out on Spotify. We're available everywhere, Apple as well, and Stitcher and Google Podcasts everywhere. And on TikTok at Reservation_Mysteries. So stay spooky, everybody.